There's not a chance in hell that this is funny or gonna work. And when you see those flat, corny, late-night monologue jokes with no audience, Colbert, there's Jimmy Kimmel, there's Fallon. What they're doing is just like reading off of a teleprompter. So a bunch of really good jokers wrote them some stuff, and then they're playing to the audience. The audience is like laughing, so they get this feedback, and they know how to do that. They stand there, and there's applause signs. And then there's producers. There's the warm-up guy that's literally telling the clock. They're like, okay, explain to the people. Yeah. Okay, when Jimmy comes out, I want a big round of applause. Let's practice this right.
Imagine discovering an unholy partnership between Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan when you wake up. Additionally, Jimmy Kimmel was completely vaporized on their first expedition. 2 wild cards with microphones and no chill, no warning, no mercy. Kimmel brought a kazoo to a cannon fight as he attempted to clap back. Hollywood was stunned by the tag team takedown that began as late-night humor. Take out your popcorn. It's not a feud. It's a demolition derby with humor.
Did Jimmy Kimmel live with him? Like, Jimmy Kimmel is a talented guy, and I don't think he's like an evil person or something, but he's made this deal where he just serves power and attacks anybody who challenges power. Like, how can... Honestly, how can he look in the mirror and say, I'm doing something honorable? Like, how can he live with himself? How can his wife sleep?
Joe Rogan is a multifaceted person. UFC shout machine, jiu-jitsu evangelist, stand-up, comedian, and mushroom philosopher. Above all, though, he is the patron saint of those who disapprove of the mainstream. And things quickly get messy when he rolls his eyeballs in the direction of the saddest punching bag on late-night TV.
So much of comedy is not funny today. It's my chief criticism of like late comedy, which I find unwatchable. I think it's totally unwatchable.
But also contempt. I mean, they're collaborators.
They're just like the fact checkers. They're guardians of
It actually has a really poetic quality. The world's most overfiltered TV personality is being steamrolled by the most uninhibited podcast host. Under the gentle glare of a studio spotlight, Jimmy Kimmel, who once delivered edgy jokes from a couch soiled with booze, now spends his evenings softly launching therapy sessions. And Joe is out here with a microphone, most likely without a shirt on, laughing at Elmeet and pointing out how ridiculous celebrity sainthood is.
The obscurity, nobody's going to care anymore. It's like you're seeing it take place with late night television. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore.
I know.
And it's slow. You have a bad business model and you're not adapting.
Yeah, the creativity's gone for late night comedy, right? Like, that's not really a thing.
Therefore, Joe didn't think twice about throwing a dumbbell through the foundation when Kimmel made the audacious error of standing on a symbolic soapbox composed of cancel culture and virtue signals. The fight wasn't even fair. Armed with DMT flashbacks, coffee, and a horde of people named Kyle who construct squat racks in their garages, Joe Rogan calmly criticized the late-night emperor's new attire. It wasn't courteous either. It wasn't nuanced. It was like a kettlebell to the face in terms of sound.
The one thing if his job wasn't to be a comedian and to do that, but his job is to be a comedian. He's supposed to be fun, and comedians are supposed to hold people in positions of power.
Suck up.
Yeah,
to the people in charge.
Exactly.
He's their Praetorian guard.
Yeah,
and it's like the self-hatred he must feel because he wasn't always. That's my point. Yeah. I mean, Claire has always been a hard partisan, talented guy, but obviously, he's not a comedian. But Kimmel was a comedian. Like, how does he? I don't understand.
I don't know
how he can.
Prepackaged sentiment is especially disliked by Rogan. He detects inauthenticity as if it were a debt. And if Jimmy Kimmel isn't the live example of forced clapter, then what is he? Wrapped in the smug aroma of praise signs and think pieces, the once jester is now a moralist. Joe didn't have to shout. He simply indicated the obvious. Kimmel lost his sense of humor sometime along the line and became a teleprompter-wielding Hallmark card. And that's comic treason for a guy like Joe. The punchline is sacred in Rogan's world, you see. It isn't sanitized. You don't put on a show of virtue. Furthermore, you don't follow it up with a tearful lecture. Stand-up isn't that. Stand. Down then. Joe, however, wasn't just about style. He went farther, though. He questioned Jimmy's act's entire premise. This notion that you can make fun of everyday people 1 minute and then seem as though you agree with them the next. That you can profit off the glamour of Hollywood while posing as one of the guys.
To the narrative to the extent that he thinks it's morally wrong to joke about these certain topics.
But it's not just that. He's like pouring hot on the peasants from the parapet. Like he's hurting anyone who challenges the king. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It's upside down. The comedians should be poking holes in the popular narrative, not propping it up.
Jimmy Kimmel is. Like, truly. No, I mean it.
You said it,
no
not me.
amount of money is worth what he's doing, in my opinion.
In the same slow, methodical, and needless way that a UFC fighter takes down a paper opponent, Rogan destroyed that story. Tucker Carlson, meanwhile, was quietly loading up the intellectual sniper rifle and fixing his tie throughout the nation. Tucker provided the smirks where Joe provided the jabs. Regulated, surgical, and in some ways even more destructive. Because there are no profanities or bro-scientific tirades in Tucker's roast. No, the velvet-gloved gut punch is his expertise. The, is this guy for real? Eyebrow lift. Tucker did more than simply call out Jimmy Kimmel's foray into political commentary masquerading as humor. He turned it into a televised critique. Once known for making jokes about celebrities collapsing, Kimmel now aspired to be the moral compass of Hollywood, and Tucker would have none of it. A man who lives off of jokes and then appears surprised when others expect, jokes has no place in Tucker's world.
Do you think that's him or a writer? Can't tell.
Jimmy Kimmel? No, it's him for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah,
He used to host The Man Show. He's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Oh.
For hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke. On top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble of.
He viewed Kimmel as a failed commentator who was playing Jon Stewart, with inferior writers and a louder applause track, rather than as a comedian. It wasn't anger. Tucker is not angry. It was confusion. How did this guy go from making fun of The Bachelor to lecturing people about democracy? Was the question that accompanied the controlled, passive-aggressive confusion. Carlson carefully worked his way into the conflict. He didn't have to speak louder. The whole thing might be made into a joke by just bringing up Kimmel's transformation from class joker to sanctimonious substitute teacher. And that's when it got lethal, because Kimmel looked funny in Tucker's perspective the more serious he tried to be. A comedian who resorted to politically correct performance art after losing the ability to crack a joke. It was like to witnessing a magician lose the ability to shuffle cards and simply begin shouting at the crowd.
The quote, comedians, they were on propaganda duty too. Watch this.
He's also pushing U.S. intelligence to find evidence for this theory that the virus was accidentally released from a lab in Wuhan. It's his new angle to feed the wingnuts, to treat this virus like it was a conspiracy of some kind.
It never happened. This plague never have happened. It could have been stopped. But people choose not to stop it.
What people? Tomorrow he'll blame Spanish flu on Antonio Banderas.
Yeah. Imagine if you're a comedian and all of your cue card has all kinds of talking points from politicians, foreign governments on it. Don't read it. You do yourself, and you become complicit in the greatest crime.
Tucker Carlson was organizing a lecture on humorous extinction at the Hollywood Echo Chamber, while Joe Rogan was shaking his head. Someone asked Jimmy if he was relevant. The other doubted his sincerity. Both successfully reduced him to a warning about the consequences of humorous people taking themselves too seriously. The actual kicker is right here. They were not even cooperating. This attack was not well planned. Two diametrically opposed ideologies looked at the same man and disapproved of him separately. From the cultural underground, Joe Rogan launched an attack. Poor Jimmy was trapped in the center like a possum trapped between two headlights when Tucker Carlson attacked from the media mountain.
Sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable. But the thing is, the problem kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic.
Mountaintop. Elk jerky was screamed at by one, while historical context was carefully cited by the other. The two punches came from completely different universes. Joe made fun of Kimmel's decline in popularity, how he was once honest, unvarnished, and careless. He now uses a focus group to develop punchlines and cries on cue. Tucker, however, targeted the ideological decay. Kimmel wasn't simply unfunny to him. He served as the coastal elite's PR machine and media puppet. exchanging comedy for sermons, and believing that applauding the right side is a sign of bravery. Kimmel didn't even anticipate the roast because he was too preoccupied with basking in the glory of his studio crowd. It struck like a ridiculous Tesla, quick, silent, and brimming with smug enthusiasm. The fallout was funny. Not because... Kimmel answered. He didn't. He was unable to. You don't react to Tucker's cold dissection or Rogan's deadpan attack. Just hope the internet scrolls quickly. The typical jargon were used by Kimmel's supporters to try to deflect. He has changed. He is courageous. He's telling the truth.
Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole. It's pretty funny. But then...
Did he really?
Yeah, so then I read that, and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns. It's transphobic to joke about pronouns. So they were chiding him for participating in a joke about pronouns.
So Kimmel was doing it. He was doing it too.
Yeah, he was doing it.
Yeah. No, he was being accused of joking about it too.
So they were upset at him, even though he was attacking the appropriate person, doing it in a manner which is also construed.
Truth. However, you're a living contradiction when Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan both agree. Everything has gone horribly wrong. It's not criticism. A nonpartisan spiritual audit, that is. Let's dissect it. Joe Rogan made fun of the change. How as someone who used to earn a living by making difficult jokes developed an allergy to discomfort. He noted that Jimmy now includes disclaimers in his jokes. How each segment seems to have gone through 5 HR departments before it was broadcast. Tucker Carlson pulled out the intellectual machete in the meanwhile. According to his analysis, the Kimmel effect is a sign of broader cultural deterioration, a loss of authenticity, the political machine's appropriation of comedy, and worst of all, boredom. According to Tucker, being bored is a sin. Additionally, Jimmy was essentially a tedium preacher in his new incarnation.
Is not so different from the job description of a journalist, as traditionally constituted, tell the truth about the powerful. Comedians are usually a lot smarter, more clever, and incisive than journalists, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. Almost none still do. Carolla is one of the very few remaining comedians in the
incarnation. Kimmel wasn't only destroyed by Rogan and Carlson. They extolled a past iteration of him that was bearable, even likable. The old Jimmy who gleefully ridiculed both sides and laughed at ridiculousness. He's gone. All that's left is a sanitized, teleprompter reader donning a branded bathrobe that resembles the ghost of his previous self. If they had yelled, it would have been less cruel, but they chose not to. They merely displayed a mirror. Straightforward honesty and pre-workout. Powder-smeared Joe's mirror. Tucker was crystal clear, a mirror of every self-satisfied contradiction. It was not a nice image staring back. It wasn't bullying. 2 men who shouldn't have agreed on anything intervened and somehow came to the same conclusion. Jimmy. Kimmel turned into all he used to.
I agree. Wait until you hear about this guy named Tucker Carlson. You are going to hate him.
The undeniably big topics, the ones that will in our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
Right. The big topics, the important subjects like these.
Well, it turns out leprechauns exist not just in cereal boxes. There are a lot of people who believe they have seen a leprechaun. It faces an even more profound threat, zombie raccoons. How much emotional support does a snake provide?
To make fun of. Tragically, he likely believes he is winning since, in Kimmel's world, the audience always applauds. When the humor hits, they applaud. When it doesn't, they clap. When he falters through a speech about justice that was undoubtedly written by someone else, they applaud. The clapping is obligatory, meaningless, and never-ending. But there is no applause from Joe Rogan's crowd. They inquire, they go back. In the comments, they quarrel. The theater is not purchased by them, and Tucker's viewers, they retain invoices. There was only the smoking remains of a man who had forgotten what made him amusing in the first place, as 2 heavyweights left the symbolic ring without any dramatic comeback or redemption story. Jimmy Kimmel was ultimately not canceled. He escaped censorship. He was made fun of. Comedic exile is what that is. The cultural tremors were not ignored, even if Joe Rogan probably dismissed it and returned to discussing aliens with a Navy, seal on creatine and elk steak. Unknowingly, Kimmel had come to represent everything that was wrong with late-night television. Under-funny, over-polished, and brimming with conceit. Tucker was giving a masterclass in relentless, dry exposure, while Joe was throwing kettlebells of derision, not only of Kimmel but of the genre as a whole. While continuing to act as though they were part of the joke, Tucker glanced at Kimmel and watched the death of authenticity televised nightly to a dwindling audience. He only emphasized how ridiculous it is that a man who used to make fun of celebrities is now acting as their emotional support system. Furthermore, Rogan and Carlson both come to the same conclusion, that Jimmy Kimmel is no longer funny, scary, or relevant, despite being at diametrically opposed poles of the ideological spectrum. Kimmel was completely destroyed, not in a public breakdown or viral explosion, but rather in the methodical disintegration of all he once stood for. Worst of all, he was completely unaware of it.